Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome home to St. Croix. We've always said from 2011 when we started Come Home to St. Croix that it was a celebration of our culture, our history, and family connections. And it's an opportunity for those who have moved away and feel a little distant from the culture to return and reconnect. But sometimes you don't have to move away to get a little distant from the culture. So it's also a coming home for those of us who live here and for those whose hearts have found a home on St. Croix. So it's a very inclusive celebration. And we started this celebration in 2011. So this is the 13th year since then. And it's amazing to me how many years have passed. My name is Sonia Jacobs Dow, and I have the privilege and blessing of being the executive director of the St. Croix Landmark Society, which means that I get to work with amazing people. From the board of trustees to the staff that I've asked to gather so that they can be introduced. But most very importantly, to all those people who volunteer, who give their time. We have a group that we call our core volunteers because we can count on them. If we're here 2 days a week, they're here three. If we're here four, they might be here five. But we can count on them as if they were getting a paycheck. And I'm not going to call them in any order. I'm going to call them in the order that I'm seeing them. So Joan Keenan, Joan, raise your hand so they can see you. Jerry Doward. Jerry is Jerry is a retired police detective. So Jerry uses those skills when he's helping you to find your ancestors. And he's the one who will say, but how many James Williams they have? You're sure you have the right James Williams? He's going to double check. So those skills come in very handy. I saw her a minute ago and now I don't see her, but Carol Wakefield. Oh, Carol's over there in the blue top. Carol worked here as the librarian and then retired and continued to volunteer as the librarian. So we're very blessed to have her as well. Am I missing somebody out of that core group? I'm going to add, I'm leaving one person out of that core group for last, so I want to make sure I got everybody else. But this person has to stand up. And her name, I always call her by her full name. She is Winifred Clark Hardy, known to most of us as Winnie. Come to your feet, Winnie. Come, Charlie Clark daughter. Winnie deserves that applause and more, even though she doesn't like to get it. She doesn't like to have a light shined on her. But Winnie, I gave Winnie a concept that I kind of borrowed and developed from Dwayne Howell. Dwayne was going to Denmark to make a presentation at a conference, and he said, we need to emphasize that you can't just research your ancestors and find them in the records. You actually have enough resources to write their biographies. And that was his presentation. I shared that concept with Winnie. Here we are with Connecting to Emancipation, an exhibit that focuses on sharing the biographies of people who were emancipated. This inspiration came in part from an exhibit that the late Ricky Marshall, George Tyson, and his wife Camilla did for us in, I believe it was 2012, I might be off a year, where when we had gotten the list of people who were arrested and questioned after emancipation. And so they did an exhibit for us and they brought one person forward, Martin, and I've forgotten Martin's last name, but they brought him to a point where I recognized his family line. And I said, Emil Henderson on our board is connected to Martin. And so I called Emil and said, you need to come see this. And he came. And I think, Emil, is it correct to say you were thrilled to see his ancestor brought forward, that we were able to connect his ancestor with living descendants? And that's our goal in doing this exhibit, is that people will come and see their ancestor and recognize their ancestor and know more about that person's story. For this phase, because this is just the first phase, We have contributions of biographies from, help me out, Mary Roebuck, May Cornwall, Annette Scott, Alvin. I always want to call him Marcus. Alvin Milligan. Um, I'm missing Daisy LaFond. Help me out. I know I'm missing. Oh, Shelley DeWeese. I call Annette. Rukia Thomas. Andrews. See, I know her history. That's why I call her Thomas. Rukia Andrews descended from Thomas. And Betsy Rosende. And then Dwayne Howell's exhibit, his panel becomes special for us today because of what we're going to be able to show you about it. Along the lines, they were helped tremendously by Carol Wakefield, by Jerry, by others. Every time I came when they were here, Joan Felix, as well as Joan Keenan, who always measures and tells us how many panels we have space for. Every time that I came when the museum was closed and they were working, Alvin was here, Daisy was here. It was just a constant. So thank you to everybody that I mentioned. So we're going to go over and see that in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to call on one of the members of our Board of Trustees, Dwayne Howell, who will today pour the libation in the manner in which the late Kofi Boateng always poured a libation for us to honor our ancestors. And so the reason he's giving you water is because he's going to invite you to join him in adding names as we pour this libation. So Dwayne Howell, Vice Chair of the Landmark Society Board of Directors, of Trustees.
Thank you. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Winnie, for the work that you did to guide this process. We are all appreciative of what you have done. So we're here because we're still celebrating and commemorating emancipation and whatever other words you want to use that ties to what happened on July 3rd, 1848. And so our exhibit highlights many of those unknown people who toiled the ground, did whatever they had to do to survive, to keep their family unit together, so that in 1850 we see the family units together in the records. And that's the unique thing that we have here on St. Croix, is that we, while the purpose was about money, it has benefited us significantly to know who we have come from. Not by DNA, not by saying that I am of African descent, but our records can tell us exactly who those people are and our long history. And that's what's unique about St. Croix. And so you see that in a few minutes. There's many stories that you will be able to see, and hopefully maybe you find some connections with some of the stories that's there as well. Right? So today we gather to honor. We honor the people that we don't know. We honor the people that we learned about in this process. And we honor our most recent people, right? And so when we honor, it has nothing to do with where we come from, geographically, ethnically, culturally. It's really about where we come from internally. And so you all have water because water is about purity. And we are in a pure sacred space. And so as you move towards the exhibit has now become a sacred space because it is telling the story of so many people. And so we ask that when you enter the space, you treat it as a sacred space and you honor each and every person who have been highlighted in the space. Right? So today, my libation is pretty simple. Is that in the hopes of civility, in the hopes of peace, in the hope of compassion, we honor the many people who we have in our heart, whether we know them or we don't know them, whether they're people of recent memory or people of far memory. And so with that, I ask you to join me just simply to pour your pure water so that we can signify that we're in a pure sacred space. Thank you. You can pour all if you want. You can call out people's name if you want, and you can pour. It is completely how you feel. Whatever inspires you today, that's how you do it. So sorry. So the question was, do I pour all or do I pour as I go? And it's really whatever inspires you today. However, these people inspire you today, that's what I want you to do. So you can pour all at once. You can call some people name, whether they're of recent memory or people who have gone a long time, or people who you didn't even know. But you know that somebody had to be there so that we could be here, right? And so, whatever inspires you, whatever motivates you, all we're asking is that we honor our co-creators. And I'll ask our co-creators just to stand once again, and I'll just kind of go from this way. And if I miss somebody as I go, just let me know. Rukia, May, Annette, Betsy, Mary, Alvin, Shelly, Jerry. Jerry was in the background. Carol was in the background. Joan Keenan was in the background. Please stand, because you're part of creating this sacred space. And the one person who don't like to be recognized is in the back, and I wouldn't even call her name. You see her, you go and tell her hello.
I gonna go ahead and get in trouble.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't film her though.
Earl, don't film her. Not if you want your camera to go home with you. I'm gonna call her name. I'm gonna get in trouble, but it's called good trouble. Mrs. Josephine B. Hector. We thank her. She's been there for every one of us who's done research at some point or another, because she's a walking history book and she knows even what's not on the records, so she can help us. So thank you, Ms. Hector, for joining us. I didn't get to introduce our staff because they're busy. Joan Felix isn't here today, but she's been here throughout this work. Maria and Anthony and Rukia. Rukia is our programs officer. Maria Quinones and Anthony Alfred, you'll meet near the exhibit. And Arlenice Montas, unfortunately, is away on a trip that she had planned for a while, but I know in spirit she's here as well. I want to ask you, when you go into the exhibit room, there's a guest book. Please do sign, and sign individually, even if you come with somebody else. It'll give us a count of the people who are here, for one thing, but also it's part of our honoring. It's that we were here to recognize and honor. Mr. Ezra Thomas, how could I forget? And I asked him to move closer. This year, We were fortunate to get Mr. Thomas to join our team as one of our tradition bearers. And so he greets you as you enter the museum. And we did it with a drum because the drum is the instrument all of us should recognize because it's the first instrument we hear and feel. It's the heart. So he's here every day that we're open to meet our visitors and welcome them to the museum. So thank you all. If did I miss anybody, Winnie? Okay. So we're going to move over to the. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So you want to talk about the. Okay. So we're going to do an introduction to the exhibit, and then we'll move over.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Our exhibit, Connecting to Emancipation. The point that we're trying to get across is that no matter how simple your life is, no matter what your profession is, where you live, anything, your being present at a time that's crucial to your community makes you important. So it is what we're trying to show with our exhibit. These are people that you've never heard of most of the time, yeah, but they're important to the individuals who are doing the exhibit. And we organize them in such a way as to cut them up in different phases. The initial phase you'll see is a poster on slavery. So we try to place exhibits related to slavery within that section. We have another section that's manumission. That's how you became free before emancipation. And we have a very interesting document that you're going to see in which a slave requested of the police court how much he was valued at so that he can purchase himself. Okay? So in that way, they were placed in manumission. Then we go on to the free colors and the free blacks. The free colors are generally mixed African and European descendants, and the free blacks are slaves who are either able to be manumitted or either by purchase or by gift. So, and we have some that can show way back that they were free by one means or another. And the last section is on emancipation. And in the emancipation, we have that whether it was you got freedom or you got serfdom. And I didn't go into all the rioting and things like that. What I tried to find is quotes from people who were there, and I try to read. Well, I don't read into it. I place it on the board so that you could look at it and realize certain things are not the way you learned it. Okay? There's one saying, I believe, on there that's saying, oh, we know that slavery is wrong, but it is necessary for us to have to work the cane plantation. So it's like, they know it's wrong, but, and there are a couple of quotes that are in there. They're placed there for you to stop and think. Okay, we as African Americans, African Caribbeans, we didn't write our own history. We have to read into what others have written about us. So basically, that's what we try to do with this exhibit. Each of the exhibitors is going to give you a short spiel about what, why, and the process, how they felt about it, and what they gained from it. We hope something. Yeah, so as we go into the exhibit room, they will stand by their panel and they will give you a short spiel on it. So as we move down now, thank you for coming. Let's go.
Just one last thing. I mentioned to exhibit. The last census before emancipation was the 1846 census, and there are more than 26,000 people enslaved in what is now the Virgin Islands. 16,000 plus were on St. Croix, and the other 10,000 were between St. Thomas and St. John. So why we call this the first phase? Because it's our intention over the next 3 to 5 years to bring more and more of those people to life. There's an opportunity for anyone who's interested, and on Saturday we'll do a workshop about how you would get started if you wanted to create a panel to add to this exhibit. But we intend for this exhibit to grow, hopefully to at least represent every estate on St. Croix and on St. Thomas and St. John. But anyone who's interested or knows someone who's interested, please call us. You can call 772-0598 or come on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We're usually here from 10 to 3. Wednesday and Saturday. We will also be here this coming Thursday as part of Come Home to St. Croix. And the workshop starts at, I believe, 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. If you're interested, we'll have other workshops coming up after this as well. But just while your interest is there, we want to give you a chance to find out more about how to get involved. So thank you. See you over in the exhibit. Thanks. Landmark Society depends on partners and collaborators for everything that we do. And the chairperson of the 175th anniversary of Emancipation Commemoration Committee is here, Ms. Carol Burke, who was instrumental in getting us some funding to support this exhibit. And I just would be remiss if I didn't introduce her and thank her and the committee for helping us with this. So we're going to start with Alvin Milligan.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I know it's warm, so we won't be long. But in honor of the 175th Emancipation commemoration, yours truly wrote a song talking about our goodness from emancipation because we hear all the bad stuff. So in a good note, we wanted to give God honor and praise and also to thank Him for bringing us and, through the struggle that today we can truly say that we have become a people that appreciate what our ancestors have done for us. That's very important, right? So you have the sheet, you could follow along if you want to sing along. On Emancipation Day, judgments rang out its face. Some people look and shall give God honor and praise. The people who came to town what practically it is. Not knowing what will be, but trusting God without fear. They bless the days and carry soul today and balancing. Jumbing and Buddha and masquerade in that place. But most of all, we enjoy the Almighty praise. For it had been mostly hardship for all it is. We rejoice to celebrate freedom from all estates. On bended knee, our heads bowed up, the Lord has heard our praise. We rejoice to celebrate freedom from all estates. On bended knee, our heads bowed up, the Lord has heard our praise. So you forget it was not a pleasant life, but they knew one day God will make all things right. So if you go with peace to Brooklyn and enjoy, they live against their ways, so never forget their shrine. We give thanks today for Bodo and Martin King, for because of them freedom bells forever will ring. Continue to celebrate our ancestors holy today. For many sacrifice their life for our very name's sake. Emancipation Day, July 3rd, 1848. We shall celebrate this day, giving God honor and praise. We rejoice, we celebrate freedom from all estates. On bending knee, our heads bowed up, God has heard our praise. We rejoice, we celebrate freedom from all estates. On bended knee, our heads bowed up, God has heard our praise. So here you have the Emancipation Song written by yours truly on July 3rd, 2023. That happens to be my sister's birthday. So as a 9th generation Crucian, and my son is outside, he's 10, and these are my two nieces who are now 11th generation Crucian, Makira and Michaela. So this was done in their honor as well. And you know their uncle's precious, right? You can see that, right? So this was written as an inspiration. Carabar called me as the chairperson of the 175th, and I had just written this song kind of before, and it was able to share at the commemoration event at Borough Park. The two pictures is the pipe organ at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Frederiksted, and then this second organ is in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it's at the Bethel AME Church. And that organ is the oldest black pipe organ in the New World. Madam C.J. Walker was the organist there, and it's one of the best sounding instruments have you ever for musicians. So I was very much elated to have shared with that. And then right here, Miss Daisy, you wrote the poem, so you could probably come and then we could skip back, so we don't have to share the mic too much. Then right here on this panel, can we just wait till we get to those panels, please? So here you have the other exhibit, From Whence We Came. And this is by, we had very dear family member. For those of us who do research on the north side of the island, we're very grateful for this documentation. Judge Carl Sarrow, who is also the great-great-grandfather of Judge Emile Henderson III. And he was judge at the time, and he did what is called the list of slaveholders and free colors from emancipation until about 1853. And in those records, he was able to capture the persons living on all these estates. You could look at the estates on the north side. And what they did is that they call what is documentation. So each person got a number, and the children also got a number. And that was one of the ways. It was twofold. One, to keep track, and also just in case that the emancipation was revoked, because nobody really knew what was going to happen at the time. So that's him. And then he was, for those that are Schusters and Brannigan, his wife, his second wife, Emma Schuster, and then she married Sarrow, but her mother was a Brannigan. So by some relation, those of us are from the Edneys and the Brannigans, she'll be related, and then the Schusters as well from her father's side of the family. So this you have Sucky Martin, who is our matriarch, who was born in 1816 at Estate Mount Stewart. And she had 3 known children, Martin Houston, which would have been my great-great-great-grandfather. And then she had also Thomas Titus Samuel, and then Felicity Francis Lawrence. And each of them tells you the story of what, and how they came down the line. I came right down to my grandfather, Granville, on one end, Granville Milligan, and then also my grandmother, Miriam, on the other end. And then there's a map of the north side, and also at Estate Mount Stewart, just before the emancipation, we had about 53 known families who had last names at that time. So you'll see a lot of the last names. These are all the last names of the families that resided at Mount Stewart. So you could check it and see if you have any connections. And I know we'll be happy to help you to find out exactly how that goes.
This is the title panel for our exhibit today. It's called Connecting to Emancipation. It kind of gives you an overview of what the rest of the panels are going to be talking about. We're going on the assumption that we did not write our own history. So in reading history, we have to interpret it for ourselves. It basically tells you, it's like an overview of what you're going to be experiencing. It tells you we're celebrating the 175th anniversary, and we're celebrating the everyday people. Not the people that we're used to hearing about, like Bud Ho or Von Schulten. This is the everyday people. People that you don't hear about, family members who may not have even been in the riots. Anyone who lived at that time, they gave support to those leaders. So that is what we're celebrating today.
How long is this going to be?
It's an ongoing presentation, so it's going to be growing. We're looking for new individuals who would like to do a panel exhibit on a family member or somebody that they're interested in. But as we go, I would say at least 2 years it's going to be.
So my board is entitled Freedom by Any Means. I actually took a long time to decide whether I should be making a panel because it was about emancipation, and I realized that the family members I was researching were free before emancipation, but they said still, we need to do it, find out how they became free. So that's why I entitled it Freedom by Any Means. So I'm starting out with this lady here. That was who I was researching, and I wanted to know how she was free. So I found out that her mother was born free as well. And then her mother actually was granted her freedom by Dr. Roebuck. And I see she has a child by the name of Roebuck as well. So I'm assuming he was not only her master, but they had a relationship. So that's how Judith became free and Eleanor became free. She got children with George, and George was also free. George's mother was Lucy Hendrickson, and she was free because someone purchased her. I don't know if she purchased herself or someone else purchased her, but she was free by purchase. So I have free by purchase and free by grant. And then when they got married, they had Sophia. Sophia ends up marrying James Richard. And James Richard's mother was born enslaved as well. But she was free by the time she gave birth to him. So we're trying to figure out how that happened. So we say freedom by means unknown. We're still doing research to find out how she became free. And they together had Richard Beecher. And Richard married Rebecca. And those are my grandparents. And that's my mother, the granddaughter, standing right there on the bench. So that's my story today. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. My panel is on George Washington, and I titled it A Headstone Speaks. And that's because it actually spoke to me, kept me up many nights. George was born in estate Annalee, and his mother's name was Jane. His father is Jasper, and he's from the neighboring estate of Spring Garden. And here I put a map to show how close they lived. Anyway, George went to be an apprentice in Montpelier to be a cooper, and I have a depiction of him, of what a cooper is, the people who worked on barrels. So George met with Catherine, and Catherine and George had 2 children together. They never married, but she died very young. So George went back to Annalee and Spring Garden. He met there with his wife. His wife is Jane of Annalee. I'm sorry, let me go back. Jasper is his father. Jasper was born in Spring Garden. Jasper wanted to be free, and this was one of the big highlights. Jasper wanted to be free. He wanted to buy himself. So he asked for his value by Henry Knight. Mr. Knight wrote to the king to get his value. His value kept decreasing, and when he was worth 400 pieces of 8, I don't know what amount that would be, but it was 400 pieces of 8, where before he was valued as much as 600. And he was appraised, and another lady was also appraised. But rather than him buying himself, what they did was do an exchange. And Mr. Knight had no problem with the exchange because his opinion, as he quoted, as far as I'm concerned, I have no objection to the exchange, as I consider the woman to be of more value to the estate. So she could have more children for him and be more profitable for the estate. So Jasper became free. He got his freedom. And here we have him as a free man, and then he married his wife, Jane. And I have a proof of their marriage. And his mother's name was Fanny. Jasper's mother was Fanny. Fanny came from Africa, parts unknown, we're not sure from where, but it's documented that she came from Africa, and her value kept going down and down to where eventually she was worth 0. And she was still fairly young with a value of 0. She worked in the cane fields as a laborer, and I haven't found when she died, but she died relatively young in consideration of how old the others were. And so I bring it all back around that it doesn't take much for you to start going back to do your own research, because all I had was a headstone that said sacred to the memory of George Washington. That's what I captured, and this man had me with sleepless nights. And so just by that headstone, I got all this information. Of course, I had the assistance of George Tyson with VISHA, the Virgin Islands Social History Association. the Landmark Society, the records that we have here, the Danish website. So it was a lot of work. And this is just a fraction of what I have because I use a program called Family Tree Maker. And I sync it with Ancestry. And it creates a document. It creates many type of reports. And one of the reports I have is every single thing that I captured with sources. And it's 14, 15 pages of information. But this is just the highlights of them. And so this is my guy, George Washington from Annalee. By the way, Annalee also is where my ancestors are from. And with Judge Sorrow, when we looked at his reports, George was 12 years old, and my great-great-grandfather was 16. And so I was hoping to find my great-great-grandfather, but I found George, who was his friend. So I'm okay with that for now.
Well, let me tell you, the 175th Emancipation Committee is proud to be in collaboration with the Landmark Society to present the exhibit Connecting to Emancipation. I was so glad that I was able to share in the opening of the exhibit today, where we have a lot of panels about ancestral history, who they were, where they came from, and where they were during the emancipation. And to be able to do that and connect back to whence they existed says a lot about our capabilities as a people today, because one of the visions of the committee is to make sure that the research, the data, the correct data, and the digitization, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to capture all these different exhibits, different display, different landmarks that are throughout the St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John to show the rich history and traditions of the people of the Virgin Islands. This is awesome. I commend the Landmark Society and everybody who researched, the families, the individuals, and who came forward to make sure that we at least have captured this as a part of our history, and we're going to treasure it as it should be to make sure that we can say that, yes, definitely this person was here, this person was my relative or a friend of my relative, because that's all the dynamics that's coming about here, and we are so proud to say, yes, Landmark Society have did an awesome job, and we are also going to make sure that the committee, the Emancipation Committee, plays its role continually to ensure that the work here is digitized as well.
I want to say once again thank you to Ms. Carol Burke from the Emancipation Commemoration Committee for their support, their financial support, their collaboration with us on the Connecting to Emancipation exhibit. There are still opportunities for people to participate in this exhibit by researching and writing the biography of one of the more than 26,000 people who were emancipated in 1848. So on Saturday at 10 o'clock, we're going to have a workshop for those who are interested in beginning that work. Some of you have already done research and just need some guidance into how to create that biography and create your own panel. So we'll be here at Whim on Saturday, August 5th at 10 o'clock. Please come and join us, and we welcome you.